What's going on, guys? It's Brendan Dzwierzynski here for the Kansas Jayhawks Instant Reaction Show. Normally, this would happen from Allen Fieldhouse. Well, the weather is bad. Players were lingering around. It was kind of a mess. And frankly, hey, there's Chiefs football on. So we are doing it live from Shea Dzwierzynski, the Dzwierzynski home studio today. But that does not change the outcome of the game for the Kansas Jayhawks as they fall in devastating fashion to the TCU Horned Frogs, 83-60. That is the second worst loss in Kansas history at Allen Fieldhouse. It was utter domination by the Horned Frogs really throughout the entire game. Jamie Dixon's group got up by as many as 22 points in the first half. KU did fight back. The Jayhawks put together a good effort led by another All-American caliber performance from junior forward Jalen Wilson. He ended up with 30 points for the game. We'll get to more on that later, but he led KU on a 11-0 run after KU had gone down by 22 points, and the Jayhawks were able to scratch and claw their way back to only being down by 10 at halftime. It was 48-38, and after being down by more than twice that at one point in the first half, KU, honestly, feeling pretty good. And after the game, KJ Adams even said, yeah, in the locker room, we were feeling pretty positive about how we were playing. We were feeling pretty good about where we were at that point. But TCU would score the first 6 points of the second half, got the lead back out to 16. And as Bill Self put it, KU just did not have a chance to set up pressure. They weren't able to react quickly, any sort of havoc defensively. That led to some terrible offensive possessions and some terrible looks for KU. And even when they got decent looks, they weren't able to put it in the basket. KU ends up getting blown out by 23 points. As I mentioned, the second worst loss in KU history at Allen Fieldhouse, save for one game that was all the way back on January 2nd of 2021. So really not all that long ago, in a 25-point loss to the Texas Longhorns. You might remember that one, 84-59. KU got blown out that year. But in this game, KU, well, let me give you a nice little point of comparison. Last year, we all remember on KU's run to the national championship, they got blown out at home by Kentucky. It was ESPN College Game Day. It was a big deal. It was all the hype for the Big 12 SEC Challenge. KU got smoked in that game, 18-point loss to Kentucky. Bill Self said post-game radio on Saturday, KU was dominated even more by TCU in this game than they were against Kentucky 1 year ago. We do have some of the individual numbers for you from this contest. Jalen Wilson, as I mentioned, he was absolutely tremendous, as he has been for much of the season, and coming off of 38 points in a loss earlier in the week in the loss to TCU, Jalen put up another 30 points on 11 of 21 shooting, and he went 4 of 9 from three-point range as well, an effective 4 of 5 at the free throw line, and why not, he added in a team-high 7 rebounds as well. Back-to-back 30-point games for Jalen Wilson, but unfortunately, nobody else was able to really chip in. He had 30 points. The rest of the Jayhawks combined, 10 other players who saw the floor combined for just 30 points in the game. And the whole team as a group, 23 of 59 from the field. That's 39% shooting. Jalen Wilson was 11 of 21 on his own. The rest of the team, 12 out of just 38 from the floor. Another miserable shooting night for Kansas, or shooting afternoon, I should say, for Kansas against TCU. So along with Jalen Wilson's game-high 30 points, KU did get double figures as well for Kevin McCullough. And if there's anything positive to take away from this game, along with the fact that Wilson has played at an All-American level over the course of the last week, it was seeing the ball go into the basket for Kevin McCullough. He had 4 quick points before the first media timeout. He was able to score 10 in the game. He still was not great. In fact, he even got pulled off the floor a couple of times with some frustration from Self. He wasn't great. He's been much better, but to see the ball go in the basket, obviously a positive development for Kevin McCullough. The rest of the starting lineup for KU, though, miserable in this game. Grady Dick, he goes just 3 of 13 from the floor, 2 of 8 from 3 after a terrible night shooting earlier in the week against K-State, and one of those threes came when the game was already long since decided. He ends up with just 8 points. KJ Adams got in foul trouble very early in the contest. His minutes had to be managed quite a bit. He only played 23.5-ish minutes in the game. He was held to 4 points. That snaps a streak for KJ, by the way, of 11 straight games scoring in double figures. He went just 1 of 6 from the floor. Really tough day for Adams with a tough matchup with all the height that TCU puts on the floor. And then DeJuan Harris, for the second game in a row, went scoreless. Now, he did have 8 assists, moved the ball well, and his defense was complemented by Self, especially in the first half. But as a whole, another tough day offensively, at least in terms of scoring production for DeJuan Harris. He's now gone scoreless in each of the last 2 games, 2 losses for KU. Bench performance, also a major deal in this one. TCU was phenomenal off the bench. 39 of their 83 points came from their reserves. KU, in terms of reserve scoring, got 3 points from Michael Jankovic, which came in garbage time after the walk-on got on the floor. Bill Self even said that doesn't really count in terms of bench production for KU. 2 points for Zach Clements, a single point for Bobby Pettiford, and another 2 for Ernest Uday Jr., who actually got on the floor in this game, as did MJ Rice, 2 guys that haven't seen the floor a whole lot over the course of the last month for KU. But that is it for the Jayhawks scoring off the bench, and for the second game in a row, and really it's been a theme all season, just not nearly enough production from the reserves for KU. On the other side for TCU, their game high was just 17 points. Shahada Wells, he went 7 of 8 from the floor, did pick up a technical foul in the game, but he was effective from the floor. Mike Miles Jr. had a big game, possibly an all Big 12 player of the preseason, all Big 12 player of the year, in fact. He had 15 points on 5 of 11. Damian Baugh also chipped in 11 points for TCU. It was a much more well-rounded effort for TCU, and if you look back on some of those early Big 12 play, late non-conference performances from Kansas, those were the kind of games that KU won where it found more offensive production. Certainly not games in which Jalen Wilson had to score half of the team's points all on his own. And in the end, KU comes away with the second worst loss in program history while playing at Allen Fieldhouse. And we should also note, and this was posted on Twitter after the game by ESPN Stats and Info, that this was the worst home loss ever by a team ranked in the top 2 in the AP poll. KU came into this week ranked second, but after a 1-point loss on the road to K-State and then a blowout loss at home against TCU, pretty easy to understand that KU is going to drop a sizable amount in the AP poll coming up this week. But the Jayhawks do have a short turnaround before they get another chance to get back in the win column and possibly reverse their fortunes. They'll take on the Baylor Bears on Big Monday coming up this Monday night. Bill Self said after the game, I know we've been quoting him a lot, but he said, look, in this kind of league, if you are not going to force other teams to play poorly, to get out of their stuff, to have off nights, you're not going to find much success. Wilson and Self agreed that TCU got pretty much whatever it wanted in this game on Saturday at Allen Fieldhouse. KU is obviously going to have to flip that around if they want to avoid a third consecutive loss when they go on the road to Baylor coming up on Monday night. Again, your final score, the game took place at Allen Fieldhouse. This report, however, not happening at Allen Fieldhouse, but nonetheless, at the loudest arena in college basketball, KU fell in historic fashion, 83-60 to the 14th ranked TCU Horned Frogs. We'll be recapping this game, K-State's win, Chiefs, Jags, and so much more coming up Monday on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, mic'd up with Jake and Fulton from noon to 3, and then myself and Dan Lucero with 580 Sports Talk from 3 to 6. We'll have recaps of all of this weekend's action. That's coming up on Monday, but until then, the Kansas Jayhawks fall in a tough one to TCU. We'll talk to you coming up on Monday on 580 Sports Talk and the rest of the sports.